Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 27 of Fabrically Speaking Live. I'm your host, Clare Rowley, the inventor of the Creative Feet line of sewing machine products. And today we are doing part 2 of a 2-part series, making a adorable little pair of pants from the Peekaboo Pattern Shop Pattern Company. You'll find a link in the description below if you'd like to make a pair of these adorable little breeches for your little baby in your life. And actually they go all the way up to size 12. Hi Pat Wells, welcome, second time viewing. Louise, hi, good evening to you. It's a little bit afternoon here in Arizona. Hi Tina from Texas. And welcome everybody. What you don't know is that my air conditioner went out 2 days ago, and I live in Arizona, so I do have an air conditioning unit inside of the studio, and I'm hoping it's not loud. Can you guys tell me if it's loud? And Linda Shaw, hi. And Pearl. I wasn't sure if you guys were going to join me today. I don't know, there's something about being really hot for days that makes you feel like you're on an island all by yourself. Hi, Teresa from Michigan. I think it says Teresa. My eyesight, you know. I got another way of looking over here, though. So, can you guys hear the air conditioner? And before you start feeling sorry for me, they are installing a brand new air conditioner right now. You don't hear it? That's so cool. That's good to know, because sometimes it's still hot in here even though I have the air conditioner on for the rest of the place. Hi, Pam. You're from New Mexico? Oh, you took your message away. Oh, I told you not to feel sorry for me. You must have been feeling sorry for me. Okay. So if you did not catch last week's episode, last week I did this little applique on the tush part for the pants. And this is stretchy fabric with a stretchy, fleecy kind of fabric on top of it. So it's a great lesson, and I thought I could get the whole thing done last week, which I generally do feel like I can get more done than I usually can on Fabrically Speaking Live Thursdays. And this is how far I got. I got the pattern pieces cut out for the legs and the tush, but I don't have the ribbing parts cut out yet. And I did reprint the pattern, and highly recommend when you print the pattern that you staple it and maybe have one pattern that you don't tape together and then print a second so you have one that you can print out. This is how big it ends up being printed out. And you can see that I did not use the actual pattern. In other words, I didn't cut it out. Instead, I traced it using our Hold Light stabilizer, and it is the one that has a hummingbird on it. When you're inside of creativefeet.com. Okay, so that is just a little recap from last week, and on the back side of this, you'll see this is shiny, and so is this. This is really shiny, and that is the Hold Light that is actually attached to the fabric, and it's attached by just ironing it to it. So I traced the pattern, ironed it to the fabric, and then I cut afterward, and that prevents the stretch fabric from stretching. It locks the stretchability of stretch fabric so that we can sew it with our regular sewing machine and not have to use a serger, and we don't have to worry about the fabric expanding or becoming sloppy looking on the seam lines. Another thing that happened this morning or today is all of a sudden one of the cameras was like going glitch, 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 glitch. And so I don't know. It's been an interesting week for me and my electronic devices. Anybody else having issues with their cell phone and different things this week? I don't know what causes stuff like that. Okay, so I need to figure out how big to cut out my ribbing pieces. And I chose the 2T pattern. By the way, did you notice the machine has been switched out? This is my Under the Sea with Clare Rowley machine from an event that I did. I painted the machine just for the event. And I touched it up and made some changes on it, and now I'm back on set with it because it had gotten chipped and stuff. And the other machine is going to go to the doctor and get fixed. And I'm going to be touching it up as well. So inside of this pattern, you have the ability to, instead of doing this little cute little bottom piece with an applique, they actually have it like you see here with just a solid piece of material. But I chose to make this butterfly, and instead of having to make an applique, I just bought fabric with butterflies on it and then fused that to that. And it has an option here for gathering stretch fabric, and that is something that I'm going to show for anyone who may want to do that. I'll show you how we gather fabric with the pearls and piping foot. But first, I'm going to sew this. If you guys don't let me forget to show you the gathering part. So where's the part that tells me how big to cut out my little pieces? I was going to be ready for this, but then the camera's glitched. So Pat, did you complete your pants? Did you try an applique? Hello everybody, I'm so glad you showed up today. Let's see here. This is the ruffle dimensions, and so the 2T, these are the cuffs. 2T is 5 inches by 7 1/4. And if you're using the metric system, it is 15 by 18.5. And that would be centimeters. And then we have, let's see, for the waistband. And then since I'm going to use this in this way, I don't have to search. I'm just going to go across, and anything for the 2T is right there. So you have the option of adding elastic, and you have the option of just using the ribbing. And since I know you guys want to learn everything you possibly can from me, I'm going to show you how to sew elastic. So everybody needs to sing happy birthday to Fiona. And she got a birthday present sent off today from a very lovely friend of hers. So I wanted to wrap it, but it was probably not going to go out if I took the time to do that. Know that I wrapped it in spirit and wish you a happy birthday, and anybody else who may be having a happy birthday as you watch this. Whether you're watching it now live, and this is July 22nd, I think, of 2021. So if you're watching it on another day, you're watching the repeat or the pre-recorded version of the show. So I need to cut 2 cuffs. And this is the Caterpillar Ultra tablet that I have on the table. My socks. I may end up needing my socks because when that air conditioner kicks in, that one combined with the one in here, I might end up with popsicle toes. I look forward to being cold for a minute. So this is the light tablet, and it lets you see through your actual cutting pads, and you can cut directly on top of the light tablet, which saves so much time. And frequently when I am doing something like this, I will just kind of throw pieces underneath my pad so that I don't have to look for it. End of August, 50th birthday. That's a big birthday. I don't want to tell you which birthday I have coming up. So this is the stretchy way of the fabric, and that would be selvage on this side and the fold on this side. And that is the direction we want always to have our ribbing pieces or our wristbands or waistbands, so that they can expand as we stretch over larger parts of your body and then come back. And it needs to have the ability to come back to its original size. So sometimes ribbing is really loose, and when you stretch it out, it kind of just stays stretched out. And so in the pattern, I believe she's suggested a 50-50 stretch, so that that is what she's implying or referring to. You want to make sure that your fabric will come back. Otherwise, you'll have baggy ankles. So I have two 5x7 1/4. Isn't that neat? Now this is the little basic and the premium size little mat, and you can buy them and have extra ones for your ultra if you buy the ultra. Well, this is the biggest size of the light tablets, and I kind of like having an area where it's blank. If you slide it around on your table, make sure that if you have like a crease in your table that you tip the board and lift it over anything like that. Otherwise, the little rubber feet that are on the bottom of your light tablet could get pulled off. And I'm saying that from experience because I was like, what are these two little sticky things that were on my table? And they were the bottoms of my tablet, and it makes it wobbly. So you want to make sure that you're mindful of picking it up to move it rather than just slipping and sliding it around on your table. You're in total lockdown again, Fiona? Well, I'll tell you, I just can't wait till we have something else to talk about. But I was thinking we might want to have a chat about masks again at some point, and why there was so much confusion and controversy about how many masks you should wear and stuff like that. Because the mask that I designed is like wearing 3 masks, and you still can breathe through it. Should you have thrown all yours away only to find out you may need them again. There we go. This is so easy, but I'm so frazzled from being concerned about the air conditioner. And it all worked out fine. See, it doesn't pay to worry. We'll do this. And since this is really not going to be for, because I don't have any little britches in my life right now, this will probably just end up being a sample. There we go. Whoops. I had no idea how many times I said, here we go, here we go. So I was cutting 2 at once, in case you guys weren't aware. This is not right though. That's just so big. Is that really what they wanted? 5 by 7 1/4. This is where I went too big. Are you wondering how I ever get anything made as bad as I have been at interpreting this pattern? I usually just make my own patterns, which is always easier to repeat your own pattern than it is to follow someone else's for the first time. Slip and slide. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Are any of you experienced at making your own patterns? If you are, hit a thumbs up. And then tell me what it is that your pattern was. Should have cut 2 at once. It's so silly. So much easier to do things like this when you're alone. So I cut that the wrong way. This is not the stretchy way. That was a waste of time. I want to cut 2 at the same time and not think so much about what I'm saying to you as I am paying attention to what I'm doing. Here we go. So they need to be 5 inches this way and 7 1/4 that way. Do I have 5 inches this way? 1, 2, 3, 4. Just under. I keep thinking, won't it be nice when I go live and everything is just perfect and smooth operating and I haven't had any stressors? So here we got 1. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 1/4. Then I need the waist as well. And these would have been cut out before I went live had the main camera not started going glitchy. Oh, you're gonna make it when you use our hold light. Fiona, I don't think you ordered that stabilizer. I know you didn't. So unless you already have it, you did not order the hold light. You got the frog, the one for embroidery. So we got how big is the waistline, and that really should be determined by the size of your little toddler. They probably give you a guesstimate. Waistband 3.5 by 18.5. Well, it feels a lot better to be perfect when you're live on camera than it does to mess up. But you learn so much more by making mistakes. Do you guys agree? Well, I can't mess up again because this is all I've got. And its measurement is 3.5. Just seems like you could have a bigger waistband than just 3.5 inches. Because it will be in half, right? So it's like a 1.5 inch waistband. Well, it would leave me a lot of fabric. All right, so it's going to be I'm going to follow the pattern. I'm going to behave. If we were making yoga pants for ourselves, though, we'd probably like a bigger waistband. Oh, this is when I feel like you guys are so patient with me. I think I did that right. Yep, so that's the really, really stretchy way. And the 1/2 inch elastic will be going inside of this. And this is where the lesson I made followed there, or show you a better way so that your elastic doesn't twist like this inside of the waistband. Don't you guys hate it when your elastic does that? And why are so many patterns made that way? And it is because most people have a really hard time stitching through the elastic and having it not break their needle or have a hard time pulling the fabric through. And so with the sequins and ribbon foot, we don't have to pull from behind the presser foot, and it makes sewing through your elastic safer and easier than ever before. So these are my 2 cuffs, and they're way bigger than they need to be because I didn't follow this correctly. So it's 5 by 7.25. I was thinking I might even do a little embroidery on, if I have time. I'm always thinking I can do more than I can. But I was like, this might go really quick, and if it does, and I feel up to it, I may throw a piece of this fabric on the hoop and do a little embroidery and show you how you can embroider on stretch fabric as well, if you guys want me to. Do any of you sew like this? Cut it out and then have to cut it out again. And I feel like just saying, cut it out, Claire, and do it right the first time. It would have been nice to have a little bit heavier fabric, but I couldn't find one complementary, the same thickness as the other. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Measure, what did they say? Measure twice, cut once. What is that? Can you guys write it? Okay, well that took forever. Here we go. 1 ankle, 2 ankles, and Is that the waistband? It looks so small. And the waistband. I'll get these out of the way. And I did not get this machine threaded. We're making something stretchy, so I generally will use lingerie thread for the seams to make sure that when the garment is stretched, that it actually can stretch along with it. That makes it so that the actual thread and fabric stretch in unison, so you don't hear the popping sound of your threads breaking. And then it's what type of needle should you use. And the 9014 is what I'm going to use for this, because sometimes we're going to be going through 2 layers, and then where you have your seams, then they come together. Well, you could end up with 6 layers, and then you're at risk of breaking a needle. A stretch needle is going to be the least chance of you having skip stitches, but it does have the same tip as a top stitch needle, a universal needle, a quilting needle. It has that rounded or balled end to it, so it won't cut through the fabric and make it shred along the seam line. If you've ever had a garment shred along the seam line, it was most likely the wrong needle was used for that garment. And I had my lingerie thread out. This is our brand of the lingerie thread, which you can find at creativefeet.com, and you'll find it under the nylon thread reference. There is a difference between invisible and invisifill. You're not late, Nikki. Hi, welcome to the party. Did I miss anybody else? Don't think so. So I carried the other machine out, and I probably carried out the bobbin. I'm not going to make you wait. I'm going to teach you about winding a bobbin instead. I got all kinds of things that I got to work around to thread things. I tried to think about it and go, don't leave anything in this machine. But apparently I did. I left the nylon lingerie bobbin in there. When you wind a bobbin with threads that don't stretch, it's really not that big a deal. But when you wind a bobbin with thread that stretches, or thread that expands and then comes back, just like a stretched fabric does, which nylon thread does, then you need to wind your bobbin slower than you normally would. Also, I recommend using a thread stand, like you see my thread dispenser here on the table. And I'm actually putting the spool on, like you see the pink cone right there. There's another cone stand on the other side of the thread dispenser. See if I can reach through and show you. So you see how it is a dual cone stand, and that is where it has zero tension on the thread when it just comes up easily like that, which will reduce the chances of your bobbin exploding. Now that sounds scary, doesn't it? Does the bobbin really explode? If you were watching last week, you know, no, it does not really explode. However, because lingerie is super strong, or lingerie thread is super strong, as it stretches and then releases, it kind of creates like heat on the actual bobbin. So plastic bobbins can actually grow or start to shrink. I mean, the plastic gets hot and it kind of shrinks and tightens up on the thing that spins on your machine. And then the top and the bottom of your bobbin, the like roof and base of it, can pop off. And it has been called exploding bobbin, where it doesn't really explode. But it's scary when you don't expect it. So the recommended thing to do to prevent that from happening is to reduce the speed that your sewing machine winds a bobbin. And on my machine, I do have the ability to do that. I have this sewing machine set to not make noise. It's so nice and quiet. If I could just figure out how to make the other machine not make noise, that'd be great. So my bobbin is winding went up and down 4 times, and now I cut the thread. It is not a good idea to hold onto the thread while winding a bobbin until it breaks. If you have that habit, sometimes what happens is it ties a knot at it gets really, really tight against the bobbin, and then instead of your bobbin just running out, you might have a sudden jerking on your stitching line, and I just noticed that my throat plate still has paint all over it. I didn't get to clean it up after painting, so this is kind of funny. I'm going to go ahead now and finish the bobbin winding. And so it's set at a slow speed. If you can't reduce the speed that your machine sews when winding a bobbin, then you should only wind half full. It's a very thin thread, so a half full bobbin will last you a considerable amount of time. Now I wish I had something to scrape that paint off before you can see it. I also covered the light that goes all the way around with paint. So, and the reason I did, if you have the Baby Lock Crescendo or any of the machines where it has a wraparound light and you can see, the air conditioning is blowing on me, and you can see the light shining at you, it actually makes your pupil close up, and it can give you a headache while you're sewing. All right, I'm going to stop winding it. It's not done, but it's almost done. So if you have a sticker that you can stick on your light, something to block that light from shining in your eyes, you'll have an easier time seeing with your sewing machine. Like hiding the light instead of letting the light shine will actually improve the way your eye behaves as you sew. Does that make sense to you? Because if you don't have a machine with a wraparound light, it's kind of like having this light shine right in your eyes. And that is what usually is wrapped around here. So I paint all the way around to block the light from shining out, because we don't need it shining out. We need it shining down on what we're seeing. So if you have one of these machines, it would be a good idea for you to do that so you don't get eye fatigue unnecessarily. Oh, that's a pretty blue. It matches the machine. So this is the lingerie thread in the bobbin. And as I put it in, I will not cut it using this cutter. And the reason I don't is because it stretches, and when I cut, I usually put my finger down on it and then stretch, and it stretches, and sometimes it'll just slip right back out of the tension assembly. It's just more of a frustration than anything else. Now, if you really want to use a colored thread, you can use a colored thread, but use the lingerie in the bobbin and the colored thread on top. I think the other air conditioner's kicked in. It smells different in here, like a waterfall. They said they were going to text me when it was done. There's no needle on the machine right now. There we go. So I am going to use the stretch needle because it is less likely that I'll have trouble with skip stitches, and why wouldn't we want to make it less likely to have problems? If you have a Singer slant needle machine, if you don't know what that is, you probably do not have that, then you have to use the Singer brand needle for the stretch. But everybody else can use the stretch needle by Schmetz. Okay, so that didn't work because there's so much wind in here. I have a fan blowing on me from another direction. One more try. It's threading it, but it's coming right back out. Oh well. Just have to use my eyes. This reminds me of being at a show and being too close to the air conditioning release or whatever they call it. One time it was summer in Long Beach, California, and everybody in my booth was wearing one of my samples and like huddled together because it was so cold on the first day. Come on, get in there. If I knew the air conditioner was done, I could turn the other one off and not have wind blowing on me. Have any of you been in my booth before? Gosh darn it, I can't do this. Oh, that's right. I'm not wearing my glasses. That's because, where'd I put them? Did I carry them off somewhere? Wow, I had no idea I really need those glasses this bad. Usually they end up on the floor. They're not there. Oh, what I did with them. I am going to turn off this air. And I'm looking for my glasses. I'll be right back. I don't want to put you through this every time I need them. Okay, so they did not finish the air conditioner. It feels like it's 100 degrees outside of this room, so I'm going to adapt. I have no idea where I put my pretty pair of glasses. Such a difference. So are you guys finding sewing a garment as fun as when I do other things? Or is it kind of boring? It's a little boring for me. Mostly because it's taken me so long to process everything. But I want to know because this is the kind of thing I could do inside of the school instead of live. I think live is more fun when we keep it exciting. I'm going to go ahead and do the gathering of the fabric really quick so I don't forget. just got to make sure I don't use one that I already have. Okay, so this fabric is a little heavier than cotton. And I do have many different ways of gathering fabric, by the way. Part of the Creative Feet technical guide and workbook and the 2-hour instructional video. But the pearls and piping foot is the foot best suited for gathering. So the tunnel on this foot is set up so that when you hold thread straight up in front of it, it keeps it centered with the needle. And if you're not familiar with how the Creative Feet attach to sewing machines, they come with adapters. And if you purchase them separately, they come packaged in their own individual package, or you can buy them in special packages. But when you do get them, you open the package up, and the foot is in one position and these adapters are in the other, and these adapters attach to the foot, transforming it into whatever style your sewing machine requires. And then on the pearls and piping foot, there's also a little washer that slides left and right. And this isn't just a piece of paper saying what's in the package. It's actually a little instruction booklet showing you what the foot does and how to attach it to the sewing machine. And this area talks about the washer on the foot, which is so hard to see because it's clear that you may miss that it's there if you're not referring to the instructions. So that little washer, it looks like a little donut, and it changes the position of trims beneath the sewing machine needle. So in this case, we're not sewing a trim, but we are going to use the actual thread coming from the sewing machine to gather the fabric. And these ruffles, I believe, are folded over ruffles as well. But you could do a satin stitch on the edge in a complementary color for the little ruffles. See, now I'm getting carried away. So I would take the thread, and we want to make sure that it measures the length of the fabric that you're going to actually sew in both the needle and the bobbin thread. And then you place the fabric beneath the foot. Let go of the bobbin thread, bring the bobbin thread up through the fabric. Then we lower the needle, and I do a couple stitches. Then lower it. Then raise the foot, take that thread, put it beneath the foot. I'm going to use a zigzag stitch. And this is just a traditional zigzag stitch that I'm using. Meaning that the stitch goes just like this, zig, zag, zigzag, and that is what the stitch pattern will look like on your sewing machine. And then the width of this stitch, I'm going to take it down to a smaller width. Length would be, the stitch will open up. So length is up and down, and width is side to side. So we want a narrower width. There we go. So I'm using a width of 3. And then you just hold up the actual thread up straight in front of you, but even if you kind of move your hand around, it won't allow you not to be centered with the needle unless the washer is not in the right spot, and it's not because I'm missing it. So slide the washer over to the other side, put it back on again, and now I'll be centered. Why is my machine going so slow? I had the speed control all the way down to low. I was a little concerned because I haven't used the machine in so long. Try to keep my hand out of the way. There we go. Now I can use a longer stitch length to speed up the stitching. It's like a day at the beach in here. The wind is really going. So see, it's not me pulling the fabric, it's me holding and resisting with this thread, which is just your needle and bobbin thread. So you don't have to go get any particular color, you can match it, but you're gonna find that lingerie thread really does blend nicely with different colors. I don't know what's going on, or it's like the guys aren't out there. The air conditioner is not running and there's no men out there putting it in. Then when you pull this out, you want to keep holding the threads that you held on to, and you can cut the threads coming off the sewing machine short, and you leave these long, and that allows you to ease this out. So isn't that cute? Wouldn't that be cute on a little girl's tushy? So you can adjust it all the way up, because you're not actually, you didn't stitch through this thread. And this is what you call easing. See, easing is evenly distributing fabric between 2 points, which is another word for gathering. I have to sneeze. Hold on, you guys. I don't know what you mean, Susan. You mean you sign in and then I'm talking? Because aren't I the only one that you guys hear? Pretty sure. I hope I don't get a cold in here. I'm not used to having an air conditioner blowing on me. No whining. I'm so grateful I have the air conditioner in here. Okie dokie. Aw, my mom used to say that all the time. So that's one way of fixing the tush on these jammies, and that is how I would recommend doing the gathers with heavier fabric. If we sew with cotton fabric or a single layer of fabric, and I have this extra piece here, I'm going to test and see if the automatic gathering technique will work, and if it does, it's because the lingerie thread is in the needle. So this is another way. We have 7 methods of gathering in the Creative Feet Technical Guide and Workbook and the 2-hour instructional video, so that there isn't really a fabric you can't gather. If you've ever tried gathering fabric and had your thread break, you know, that's a thing of the past. So in this case, I'm using just a straight stitch, which is not as ideal for stretch fabric, because a straight stitch is the least stretchy of all the stitches. But this is just me seeing if the automatic gathering will work. Straight stitch, so a couple stitches forward. Well, that didn't move at all, did it? And then back to secure. Now we take our tension, and normally I have you go all the way to 9 on the tension, but lingerie thread's already going to be a tighter tension, so I'm taking it to 7. And if you've never used tension that high, well, now you have a reason to use a tension other than just automatic. Hi, Kimberly from Oklahoma. And now to make it gather, we're going to use a long stitch length. So I'm going all the way to the maximum stitch length, and we'll see if this will work. You can hear the thread going through the tension. It's so stretchy of a thread. Is it gathering? No, we'll go a little bit higher on the tension. So you can see this is not ideal for a t-shirt. Where's a piece of fabric? So it barely gathered at all. But if we take this, and this is cotton, so a few stitches forward, a few stitches back. Wish these machines would go backward easier. And then it gathers up. All right, I'm getting carried away, as I frequently do. Each of the gathering techniques we have, when it's spoke of as gathering, are adjustable or easable so that you can adjust without risk of having your thread break. I feel like I'm procrastinating because I don't feel like sewing the garment, but I'm not. I'm just trying to give you guys a well-rounded lesson today. So we're going to go to the next page on the instructions. That was if you wanted to follow the peekaboo pattern for little girls and have ruffles on the back piece. Next page is to start sewing in the tushy part. And I have it hiding under here. So now we have to fit this piece into there, and this is the final part that goes to there. So this is how it's going to go together. And I may have to disconnect the hold light from the fabric in order to achieve that. If she calls for easing in the pattern. This is a perfect job for the Satinedge foot when you have to sew curves, and the best foot for sewing the drunkard's path if you're a quilter. So I'm going to remove this foot and put on the Satinedge foot. This is the Satinedge foot, which has been flying out the door because we have an ad running on Facebook. If you're one of the new customers that recently picked up a Satinedge foot from our ad running right now on Google and Facebook, welcome to the Creative Feet family. Know that I did invent this foot for a woman who was born blind and deaf. Her name was Mary, and she was taking tailoring at the Braille Institute. Getting the hang of using this is mostly learning not to hold on too much and not to get your face really close to the sewing machine needle. So if it's a little awkward feeling in the beginning, is because you have to do less to use this foot. On my machine, I just snap it right on. And it will lean to the side because it's carrying all that weight of the screw assembly and the nut. But once you put the foot down, it levels off and sews fine. This is the left leg. Is this supposed to go here? That would make more sense. I don't know, it looks like it's... I feel like there could have been a better shot on this pattern of, you know, like both sides. instead of only showing one. But maybe she says, so that's the right sides together. So one curved edge of the back panel to the, okay, so this is the left leg. Then we know that it's going to go like that. So is this the, boy, it's been a while since I made pants. I just feel like she could have given us a better shot of this. It looks like it does go to the longer side based on this one here. See what I'm saying? There's two curves, but the photo's too close to determine which side to be on. And she doesn't really have you do any of those. I just kind of was talking about it when we cut it out last week. All right. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's this way. Pat, did you make it? Can you tell me which one is right? Are you in the room, Pat? Did you walk away from your computer or whatever you're watching on? I often wonder what you guys are doing. What are you guys doing while I sit here and talk for a couple hours? So if I go like this, can that then fit from this point? Can it pivot? I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's going to fit. You had trouble with that. You have trouble figuring out which side is right? Looks like her piece is longer than mine. I wonder if I accidentally cut out the wrong tushy piece. Wouldn't that be a problem for me? I wish I could think when I have to really think. I wish I could think and talk at the same time, but sometimes I have to just be quiet. I wonder if it's just that because this side does look like the other. I think I'm going to have to not have this on so that I can fit this piece into that hole. We'll see. I'm pretty sure I followed the right guidelines. I mean, those of you who watched me last week, you know that I was careful to use the right piece, the same color line to trace. So I'm going to start with using the foot with a 1/4 inch, and then if I can't get it to piece or to fit, then I may have to remove the hold light. I have... Susan, they wouldn't let me. Your comment made me hide it, or it hid it. So you're in bed with your computer? I guess it thought you might be saying something naughty by saying you're in bed. I think it's so funny how they hide some of the comments you guys make. All right, so here we go. Setting a 1/4 inch seam allowance is done by taking your measuring tape and placing it beneath the presser foot, selecting a left needle position on a straight stitch, and then you lower the needle onto one of the lines on the measuring tape, and then you just turn the nut on the foot and move the wire that's inside the opening to the net 1/4 inch mark, and that is how we achieve a 1/4 inch seam allowance using the Satinedge foot. And the dot, it's like maybe she's leaving a spot, but the dot's right there. This dot hides any reference if she had one piece staggered down, and it doesn't indicate that. Okay. My thread is blowing around. One good thing to do when you don't know how something's going to work is to use a lower tension and a longer length. And that way you can pull it out if it's not right and kind of test it before doing a final or forward and reverse stitch. Of course, this is stretch fabric, so what I'm wanting to actually show you guys is how to make this seam stretch. And we may have to sew it without the hold light keeping it from stretching. If she stretches as she sews her pattern pieces together. My focus is here, not back here, not at the needle, but right at the white part of the guide. And you just want to make sure both of your pieces are coming together right there. Think of that as the front door to your house. This is where all your neighbors want to come to. And these are all the neighbors on that side of your block. And these are all the neighbors lined up on that side of your block. And you want to bring the neighbors together at the door, not at the needle. The needle's in the house. This is at the door. This is a silly thing that maybe you'll remember. So you just keep bringing the fabrics together, keeping your focus right there. Ignore everything else, and it's going to feel weird, just as it does when we sew two curved quilting pieces together. Another way of doing this would have been to applique. So you see how they're not fitting? And this tells me I either cut this piece too small for this, or she eases as she sews because she's sewing without having something locking the fabric. So now I'm gonna raise my needle and take this out. And I forgot to lower my tension. There we go. So, this is what she's showing. So in this picture, she's showing the wrong side of this piece. Right? Upside down. This is the left leg. And it's like that. So maybe that's it. And I need to sew this side together. And what will happen if I did cut the wrong pieces, then I'm not gonna finish. I'm going to be basically just showing you the principles of sewing this together and let you guys make your own pattern or use the pattern. And, you know, it's a lot easier to do something like that when you're not teaching live on YouTube. Okay, so I think I'm going to do this upside down and backwards. So basically doing the same thing except for, and this seems like it will fit. We'll see. So now that's the point. And I'm going to take the tension down a little bit because I didn't last time. And I'm not securing the end because I want to see if it's going to fit. Yeah, definitely could have had a little bit more markings on the pattern. Keeping the same focus right there. So what's happening here is this fabric is fitting. So this is If any of you are going to make the pattern, it's the smaller curve that it goes to. Now we have a tushy part that fits, and I can peel this away. And I'm going to go ahead and do the other as well. Take this to the other leg. If I cut this wrong, I'm going to be like so embarrassed, because I'm supposed to be teaching you guys, not showing you how to mess up. So what I'm doing is what's called a stay stitch. That's why I'm not worried about my tension being tight. What I'm doing is showing you how to adapt to a regular sewing machine for a pattern that calls for an overlock machine or serger. And the hold light makes your fabric behave like it's not stretchy while you're initially sewing your seams. It sounds funny, doesn't it? So now I'm coming around here, I'm going to lower the needle and lift a little bit. And I'm just better at sewing the other direction. Do you guys notice that you're better at sewing a different direction? Kind of like your right hand, left-handed thing. And okay. So now we have our tushy piece. And then we would go like this and sew the middle piece probably. I got ahead of the instructions. This is one side, and so it's going to come together like this. Are there two gussets in this? You don't see the front of the pants. Okay. So we want to do an overlock stitch, and if your sewing machine has an overlock stitch, and this is a regular sewing machine, then we will use that and go back over where we were, but I'm going to go ahead and remove the hold light, and that stitch that I just sewed is what's called a stay stitch, and it will, because it's a non-stretchy stitch, being a straight stitch, it'll stop the fabric from stretching when I go ahead, come back around with an overlock stitch. And an overlock stitch has a straight stitch that goes on the left-hand side, and then the right-hand side goes off the edge. But there has to be a straight line look to the stitch on your machine, and then a stitch that looks like an overlock stitch with stitches going in different directions on the right-hand side. And because I can't like move cameras around right now. Wonder if I can move my close camera. Move my sewing machine. I have it set so I can slide my machine around. Nope, I can't get the machine that far over. I'll draw the stitch that I'm using for you. I don't do a lot of this, so I have to look at my stitches. And so an overlock stitch has like a straight stitch going on the left-hand side, and then it has like different pattern stitches coming out like this, and you don't see another strong line on this side. This is the fabric itself. That pin is dried up. Where's my other one? Here we go. So if this is the fabric itself, and that's the edge of it, and this is, we're trying to get a seam allowance. We're trying to get a 1/4 inch stitching line coming along 1/4 inch in from the edge of the fabric. And then we want a stitch that's going to move and go off of the edge on this side. And that is what your overlock stitches look like. Trying to find one so I can draw what it looks like. This is the actual stitch that I'm going to use. It actually looks like triangles coming out like this. And then it has a line going like that. And the reason I'm doing that is because it's less stitching for me to think about as I have the wire on the foot to deal with. So the hold light can actually tear and come off, and we're left with that straight stitch. And if you're not familiar, oh, this is, I should have peeled it off before let me do the leg one. So you can, I don't want to remove the hold light from the entire garment from over here until I've sewn that together too. And it really doesn't matter if you don't mind a little bit of this stabilizer in the stitch, but if you don't want any of that stabilizer in the stitch because you can hear it, then it just tears right off because it's a straight stitch. And you can see that there's no puckers at all where those two fabrics join together, where you normally would. Lorinda's in here? There you are. Hello, Lorinda. You guys want me to show you what would happen without the hold light? On the rest of the garment, I'm going to not use the pattern. And I'm going to go ahead and overcast this now. Stretch fabric is not as scary as it seems. I need to get this off of here. So I have a habit of carrying my glasses and my tweezers off, and I'm feeling like I'm going to get sick if I don't turn this air conditioner off of me or block it somehow. No complaining, Claire. I have to discipline myself. Do any of you have any questions? This is a good time to ask questions, as this is tedious and I gotta remove. And the reason it's harder to remove the stabilizer on this side is because I have the applique, stopping it from just peeling off. If I had my tweezers, then I would just peel. It would be easier to grab. I could use a nap right now. I'll nap with Tiger. My dogs are so good for naps. They know what it means too. I'll go at nap time and they get all excited. Of course, almost all day they're napping. Little show-offs. It didn't seem like I had right sides together, but I did. See, Tina? But in the pattern, I was looking at it upside down or backwards. just so beautiful though. I mean, there's no pucker at all, which is normally not the case. So I'm going to just go ahead and do one side. It's got a lot of static cling. It doesn't like to let go of you. Now I just need a little 2-year-old to give these to. I'm concerned because the air conditioning guys were here. I heard them even like kick it on, and there's no text from them. So why would they turn it on and then not be here unless they don't have, like it didn't fit or something? I don't know. These are the kind of things you do sitting on the couch with your feet up, watching TV. I can always finish removing the rest, but I do want to show you how the fabric is stretchy again. Tweezers, where are you? The Satinedge Foot does a lot of different things, Fiona. So sometimes we sew over the pin, and sometimes we sew to the side of it. Sometimes the guide pin's 1/4 of an inch away, and that's how I achieve the 1/4 inch seam allowance. But when we do the overcast and overlock stitches, we have stitches that swing around and jump all over the place. So you need to, and I'm going to show you in a second, how to make sure that the guide is in the proper position for using the foot as an overlock foot with your overlock stitch. Yay, it's coming off. Now it's all nice and soft again. Really soft, and that stretchy fleece fabric that's on the other side, it feels like a pad. All right, so I can always clean this up after when we're not on live. Now, if you had an overlock machine or an overcast machine, or a serger, I meant to say, you have to worry about cutting your fabric. So sometimes it can be intimidating to use an overlock machine because of the blades cutting that fabric. If you're nervous about that, if you cut your fabrics just a little bit bigger, allowing for that 1/4 inch or that cutting, sometimes that helps to make it so you don't accidentally make a pair of pants way too small. Have any of you ever felt challenged by your overlock machine in that manner, like nervous about losing fabric? This is stretch thread, yes. Jean, it is our Lingerie Thread, which is a nylon stretchy thread. And that is also what's in the bobbin for the applique that I did last week. If you're not familiar with Lingerie Thread, well, it used to be very popular. And it makes it so that if you do use a straight stitch on stretch fabric, it's 60% less likely to break than polyester. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing that I did already. Instead of sewing a straight stitch, now I'm going to use the overlock stitch, and I'm going to set up the Satinedge foot in this manner. So this is the Satinedge foot, and when you turn this nut, there's a wire inside the opening, and that wire, because it changes position, a lot of people are nervous about where to place that actual wire. And the wire is generally always right off the fabric's edge. So that would be the wire on the foot, sitting right along the edge of the fabric. So in this case, the wire is going to be way over to the right, because on this particular stitch, it sews in a 1/4 inch and then it comes out like that. So the stitch that comes out on the outside edge must exceed the pin on the foot. And that is what I'm going to do now, which is, it sounds all scary until you realize it's really not. And you can test it with a scrap piece that you have ready. Just place the guide so it sits off the edge, select that stitch. Oh, I gotta turn, I'm gonna give myself a break from the air conditioner. Are you freezing too, Tinkerbell? I think we need a break. I'm freezing right now. Stay in here where it's nice and cool. All right, where's that stitch I selected? There it is. Now this is when you have to pay attention to the opening in the foot. It is not designed for a stitch wider than 5. Keep in mind this foot does 27 different things at least, if not more than that. And if you have a computerized machine, the first stitch is going to be the one that matters the most, which is the seam allowance on this particular stitch, or that's what they consider the most important part of this stitch. So we have to cycle through this, and you cycle through it by turning the hand wheel toward you. This is why I have a scrap piece ready to do this. And now this is the dangerous stitch. This is the one that could hit the wire on the foot. So I'm bringing it down, and then I move the fabric out of the way so I can see better. I don't know if that's helping you see or not. I have to put my glasses on. If you need glasses, wear them as well. This will be easier for you to see. I think Tinkerbell was getting too cold too. See if can I tip it so you can see better? Yeah, you can. So when I bring that needle down, I make sure that the wire is just left of the sewing machine needle, because we want to go over the guide pin, and that keeps it from allowing the fabric to crunch up. So if you've ever had fabric like roll and get smaller, that wire prevents that from happening. So that's what's going on now. This foot is now ready based on this stitch. And the reason I selected this stitch is because it only has one stitch that goes over to the right. It doesn't have a bunch of different ones. If it has a bunch of different ones, well, you have to turn the hand wheel until you know that needle has gone up and down for every strike of that stitch pattern. Well, I didn't line that up very well. Here we go. So this is the stitch that's actually going to keep the garment together. And I am nervous even though I already checked it. So if you're nervous when you do it too, the first couple stitches where it goes off, well, stop and use your hand wheel and give yourself that comfort of knowing that it definitely worked. We also want to reduce the pressure that the presser foot is applying onto the fabric. Now, this isn't feeding through very well because I started off the edge. Okay. Try not to stretch the fabric as you now use your overlock stitch on your regular sewing machine. Now, if you do not have an overlock stitch, I'm going to show you how to do that as well. If you have a regular sewing machine with just a zigzag stitch, I'm going to show you how you can ensure that a stretchy garment is going to not break on the seam line in a second here. Don't want to leave anyone out. Wow, the temperature is dropping very quickly. For those of you who don't know why I'm talking about that, is the air conditioner is broken in the main part. And they're replacing it, but they left and it's not working. I don't even know if there's an air conditioning unit out there right now. Maybe just a slab of concrete. But they know I'm having a live show right now, so they cannot call me. All right, so I'm coming down to the point, and I'm going to do the other side like a regular zigzag stitch only machine would do this. For those of you who do not have a machine with an overlock stitch on it. And see how it still has no puckers at all, nice and smooth, and it has the ability to stretch in all directions and not come apart. So on this other side, I'm going to discuss, if we don't have an overlock stitch, what we want is to kind of do what I've already done, but with a zigzag stitch instead of a straight stitch. We'll go ahead and do a secondary stitch right along here using a very small zigzag. And you may have this stitch on your machine as well. In the beginning of stretch fabric, and I've been working with sewing machine companies ever since stretch fabric was released for you guys. We used to sell it to the factories, and I helped develop procedures with my father. Alongside my father, we had a store in Los Angeles, California, back when almost all garments were made in the United States. And so stretch fabric came out, but consumers weren't allowed to even buy it. Do you remember that? Do any of you remember Stretch and Sew class? And when that came out, we suddenly were able to buy a thread that we could use, because cotton thread shrinks, bleeds, fades, breaks. And so it was awful with stretch fabric. The needle was also terrible on the stretch fabric. It literally was tearing the fibers and making your thread shred, and seam allowances breaking along the side of your garments. Factories were stressed out trying to figure out how to work with it. It was challenging. Just because we suddenly had the ability to have stretch fabric didn't mean we knew how to handle it. And so sewing machine companies thought, well, we need a really strong stitch. And they started developing stitches that moved in a forward and reverse motion. And they're actually called forward and reverse stitches. And they called them stretch stitches, but they're the worst possible thing you can do to stretch fabric. As stretch fabric stretches, right? So if you have the pressure foot pushing down on top and the feed dogs pulling through on the bottom, and you move a stretchy fabric in the forward and reverse motion, it kind of spreads it out like pizza dough, and it made your fabric just destroyed garments. So then they were like, all right, so we need a forward moving stitch, but we need it to be able to expand. And that is when they come up with this really clever little zigzag stitch that you may have on your machine, because it is not a forward and reverse motion stitch. A lot of people have it, even if you didn't spend a lot of money on your machine. So go ahead and look at this drawing. And this is what I use for lingerie as well. Okay, so that pin is just going to be tossed. Let's find another one. Here we go. So it's only about, if you look at a measuring tape and you can see how close these marks are together. Okay, so those are like 16th inch distances, and that is how wide overall. So from left to right, the stitch is only about 1/16 of an inch, which is just a little bit around almost about a 2.0 millimeter. This is very narrow. Oh, another pen that's not going to work. Oh my goodness. There we go. And it goes left, and then when it goes over to the right for the zigzag stitch, it goes up. Then it comes down, then it goes up. So it's moving side to side very slightly, but moving up more. And so what that does is it creates a stitch that can expand 50% more than it would if it were a straight stitch. However, because the narrowness of that stitch pattern is so small of a side to side, it appears to be a straight stitch when you look at the outside of the seam when you use it. So that is the stitch that I would recommend if you have that stitch. If you go to creativefeet.com, the lingerie thread is under the nylon threads. So if you click on thread, you'll see nylon threads. So if you don't have that zigzag where it moves up and down, then use a zigzag stitch, but narrow your width to like a 1.0 wide stitch. And that's a millimeter. Does that make sense? So the idea is to not just make a pair of pants, but to make a pair of pants that the child can jump up and down on top of a bed and you know, wiggle around, and the fabric can expand and move around with the body, and the thread doesn't snap. If you've ever bought a pair of leggings yourself and had the seam allowance pop when you wear the pants and have to keep fixing your pants, fix them with a stitch like that and they will stay together. So this is a good way to mend your own leggings as well. Yeah, nylon is stretchier than polyester. They both are synthetic threads, nylon and polyester. Nylon doesn't take color as well as others. So it's not available in a lot of different colors. You don't need a lot of different colors though. And I'll try to explain it. My son has described it in our last blog at creativefeet.com that I did discuss the threads and tried to explain the differences between them so that you would understand better why you don't need a lot of colors of the nylon lingerie thread or the nylon invisible threads. They actually kind of reflect color because they are see-through-ish. And lingerie doesn't feel as plasticky as nylon invisible thread does, but it is translucent where you kind of, it's almost see-through but not quite. It's softer, so it doesn't scratch your skin or infants. It's the best thread to use on the back side for anything you're going to make for children, because polyester is abrasive. It can kind of scratch your skin. So if you've ever worn a pair of leggings and they itched along your seam, odds are they used polyester thread. Because the polyester thread doesn't stretch with the stretch fabric, it kind of saws on your skin, and will do the same thing to children. So lingerie thread would be the best thread to use for seam allowances on anything you're going to make for a child. It's also so strong, so if you're going to do heirloom quilts, t-shirt quilts, memory quilts, whatever you want to call them, that's all stretch fabric on the top of the quilt. Even though you stabilize it to try to lock the stretch, the fabric itself still has that stretchable nature to it. So at least put it in the bobbin, and then you can use colored thread in the needle. But you can't see the color of the thread when you use white on light colors all the way to white. So white to like a medium. As soon as you get into the medium tones of like red, then you would switch to the black on the lingerie. And the same rule applies to the invisible thread. When you're working with invisible thread, it's really light color threads use the clear. When you hit red, then switch to the smoke color, and the light won't reflect and show up as much. So it's quite an interesting concept between the threads, but lingerie thread is nylon, and we call it lingerie because it's the thickness that would be used to make lingerie. Nylon thread, in the same type that the lingerie is used for upholstery as well, except for it's thicker. So if you were to go to any of your fabric stores and you want to make a couch cushion, then you want to use the nylon thread. Why? Because couch cushions, upholstery fabric, has a very loose weave. It's designed to stretch and move around when someone sits on it. When you sit on a cushion and then the fabric stretches, if your thread doesn't stretch, well, it'll break. And if you imagine car seats, automobiles, the same thing. They have to use a stretchier thread. Nylon thread is, well, nylon's been replaced by Kevlar in more expensive items. But I don't even know if you guys can buy Kevlar without really looking for it. Does that make sense to you guys? Now I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do this with a regular sewing machine that just has a zigzag stitch. I'm going to mute myself for a second and take a sip of water. All right, so I'm going to use a very tiny zigzag stitch and run it right along where my straight stitch was. And I'm not going to use the fancy zigzag stitch for those of you who, so that you can see how that I can do it without it. If I can figure out how to find my regular zigzag stitch. So I'm taking it all the way down to a 1 width and 1.5 millimeter stitch length. So 1.5 millimeters between each zig and zag. And that's really, really close. So from the outside, it's going to look like a straight stitch. And I am sewing this just to the side of that straight stitch. So when I flip this out to the outside, you'll be able to see what it looks like on the seam allowance to use a zigzag stitch for in place of a straight stitch. And I have the wire away from that. And I'm going to look at the guide on the stitching line that I sewed before. So the guide is going to help me see, and I need my glasses. Correct. Jean, you can use a colored thread in the needle, like a polyester in the needle. I wouldn't use rayon, silk, or cotton ever on stretch fabric. So polyester would be the other option. And your question is, can you not use the lingerie thread in the needle and the bobbin? And that's correct. But if you use it in the bobbin, well, at least you got a better chance of it not breaking. It's still going to be a little bit scratchy though against the skin. So I'm going to go a little bit longer on the stitch length. It's too short. Going to 2. So 2 millimeter is working better. Ignore the needle, watching the guide, keeping the guide on the stitching line that I sewed before. That stitching line that I sewed with the hold light, which stopped the fabric from stretching. Hold light is no longer on here, so it is more challenging to keep the fabrics from stretching. But that stay stitch, that straight stitch, did lock the fabric. And there's other ways of locking your fabric, you guys. I'm just beginning to show you the tricks to sewing stretch fabric with a regular sewing machine. So if you have a serger and you've never used it, do not feel bad or guilty. There's a lot of, countless people that have them and that never use them. And you get really excited when you buy one new. And if you're not going to be using it a lot of people just forget the training that they received. And then they're nervous to use it because of all the knives and loopers swinging around. I'm having to look around the microphone and this light, so bear with me here. Probably should have left the whole light in there until I did this stitch. But you can see the difference in how easy it was to sew with the whole light in there. And the whole light is this, for those of you who are maybe watching later, it's a stabilizer that fuses onto your fabric, locking the bias, that we use to trace our pattern on. I don't know if you can see my hands in the way. I'm just dealing with all these things in front of my face. I'm just going to peel that off. I think I got a handle on it now. And I want to show you what we do when we don't have the whole light, because we still have to sew all of this. And you can see it's very stretchy. Those of you who already have our liquid-based glue are going to love knowing that liquid-based glue is a water-soluble stabilizer in a bottle. That if you pin your fabrics together with it, will stop your fabric from stretching when you go to sew it. Probably could have gone longer on the stitch length. So on the right-hand side with the zigzag stitch, that's what you see. Even though it's a zigzag stitch, you can't see anything but what looks like a straight stitch. And then you have that incredible stretchability. Okay, so that's two ways of doing that. Now let's follow the directions. And see what step is next. Reminds me of chaps for a little cowboy outfit. We know which side's right, which is the right leg and which is the left leg, because that's the tush. So the next step is to sew the front curve. If I am correct. And here we have a really, really stretchy curve on stretch fabric. So to keep it from stretching as we sew, we'll use the liquid-based glue. There we go. I feel so short with all this stuff in front of me. You still have my VCR or my VHS video? It is inhibiting using one. You have to use stretch thread. In this case, and I would not ever really use polyester in the seam on stretch fabric. Not in the needle. Even if I have it in the bobbin, I would use the lingerie thread in the needle and the bobbin for the seam, because it's going to stretch and it's soft. It doesn't scratch your body. Yeah, the double knit, you got a lot of stretch fabric. Well, now you can pull it out and start having fun with it. I don't know how I got this thread here. Ugh, what did I do to those? Now, nylon thread is really strong, so if you have a cat, you want to make sure that you never leave it like connected to your sewing machine if you have the thread dispenser. I'll tell you a little story about what happened to one of my cats in the past. His name was Suki. And a thread dispenser, you take the thread up and then bring it to your sewing machine, so you have a space between the sewing machine and the thread dispenser. And you know how cats walk and their tails kind of curl? And the thread is so lightweight, he couldn't feel it, and it kind of locked into his tail. And he went up the stairs, around the furniture. I ended up finding him on the stairs. And he had unraveled yards and yards and yards of my invisible thread. It's only 4 thousandths in diameter, so it's so thin that you can barely see it. It's like a piece of hair, but it's super strong. And that is the other nylon thread on our site, is the monofilament, and used for a lot of other applications that you'll see me do on my show. And I tell you in the instructions to use it. 4 thousandths in diameter monofilament thread for sewing beads, sequins, rhinestones, chain. You can also use it for invisible applique in place of hand sewing. You sew and you can't see. Yeah, I had to surgically kind of cut and get him untangled. Poor cat. He was so stressed out. I couldn't see what it was that was holding him down. And so ever since then, and I don't have a cat anymore, but when I did have cats in the future, which I had ever since then, I would always cut and make sure I didn't leave any thread connected to the thread dispenser, because those cats get up on tables. Naughty kitties. There's lots of kitties sewing with their parents or your human parents. So now we have a zigzag stitch that's very tiny that's substituting for the straight stitch or the seam allowance. Now we still need to finish the edge of the material so that it doesn't fray. And there's 2 different stitch options. If you just have a regular zigzag sewing machine, well, you have one option. You have a zigzag stitch, and you can use that stitch to zigzag along the edge of the fabric. However, the most stretchiest, I didn't need to say most, the stretchiest of the zigzag stitches is one that goes zig, 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 zag, zag, zag. So 3 steps over. It's called a tricot stitch. It's also called the serpentine stitch on a Bernina sewing machine. So on the Bernina, it's kind of rounded instead of a straight zigzag. But it's pretty much 3 stitches per zig and per zag. And what you do is you take that stitch length and you squish it. So that's probably a 3 millimeter zigzag stitch there. And we want to take it all the way down to a 1 zigzag stitch length. So the up and down. The width is determined by the opening in the foot. So you cannot exceed the opening in the foot, and you need to take into consideration the guide pin or wire that is also taking up some of the space within the zigzag opening. So that guide pin is going to be off the edge, and the final stitch, the stitch that goes furthest to the right, we want to go over the guide pin. Yes, kitty cats get everywhere, don't they? What is your wildest stories, you guys, if you've had a cat, of the place that you were shocked to find your cat? I was shocked when I found my cat inside of a drawer that was closed. So somehow he got himself in the drawer, and then he closed it with him in it. And he was pretty amazing. His name was Max. That little piece is bugging me. So what I'm going to do now is this stitch is going to go zig, 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 zag, zag, zag on that raw edge right there. And I'm going to go as wide as I can go. And in this stitch, it does go the furthest one to the right. And you want to do all stitches of that zigzag stitch. So I think I'm going to be able to go to 5 millimeters on this. Double checking, always by only turning the hand wheel towards you for full rotation of the stitch pattern. And that's every stitch that it makes. This is the far right stitch, and my guide pin is to the left of it. Okay, so that's definitely correct. Now I can use the foot to guide off the edge, and it will keep the fabric from curling up or getting really small inside, so that it will look similar to an overcast stitch or overlock stitch. This is less violent to the fabric too, because it's only a forward movement. This is also a stitch I use to mend things that stretch. And the shorter the stitch length, the more stitches it covers on the fabric. It has a very nice look when finished, as if it's an overlock stitch, and you do not have to worry about this ever coming apart. I frequently use this stitch. And with that lingerie thread, even though it's white, it blends in beautifully with this color. Once you get confident and know that that guide pin is not going to move while you're sewing. And the reason it doesn't move is because I designed this foot with a nut. It's really hard to turn the nut. The sewing machine feed dogs hit the bottom of the foot as the machine sews. So that's why the nut is tight and it's hard for you to turn it, so that the nut doesn't unscrew while you're sewing. So can you see that well? That is the regular sewing machine method. This is an overlock stitch. And both are really nice and smooth without any puckering. And both have that nice straight stitch. Now she tells you now to do a top stitch. To take the stitch and push it, I think, towards the tush. We'll see. So once you have the two sides sewn, then she suggests you go around with a top stitch. Press the seam allowances towards the pants, so away from the tush. Okay, we will do what she says. Hi, Better Days. Welcome to today's lesson. I want to do the opposite. I want to push the seam into the panel, but I'm going to be a good student, since it's not my pattern, and push the seam allowance out toward the pants. And it probably is very important to do that. The Satinedge foot is now going to be used as a top stitch foot, and that is basically what we do when we follow these instructions. Is we're going to top stitch around this patch. And I think it's going to look really cute. So it pays to do what she says. Now, here would be a time when you could switch to a color if you want to have that stitch really show. And then keep the lingerie thread in the bobbin and have it be a contrasting color on top. Just because I'm so slow at threading needles, I'm going to just use the lingerie thread. I could switch to the pink thread that I used on the butterfly. That's up to you. Because the top stitch is only going to be a straight stitch. I still am like a little bit hesitant to just even do this as a straight stitch, but we will follow the directions. Straight stitch. And then you lower your needle, bring your needle down. How far away do you want it to be? She doesn't really specify how far away from the edge to do that. And she actually may have had to do this to smooth it out, because you can see on her pattern, she's got a lot of, like stretched out looking stitches that we don't have, because we use the hold light first. We have a nice smooth looking stitch. Straight stitch. However far away the wire is from the needle is how far away your stitching line will be away from the fold. And we want to make sure that's pressed real nice. Ignore the sewing machine needle, watch the front of the guide, and we're kind of feeling to make sure that that seam allowance remains pointing in the correct direction. Smoothing it out without stretching it out. Looking not at the needle, but right here. Once you have the guide set, you shouldn't have to sit there and watch your sewing machine needle. Because I'm going to bring my needle down here and rotate. I feel a little dizzy. These glasses I think are stronger than my other ones. So what temperature is it in your area right now, you guys? And you can hear the needle, or maybe not, because my microphone is a special microphone. But it's pounding through right now because it's going through 4 layers. And that is why I started with a 9014. I don't have to think. Could have just used a 12 or 11 stretch needle up until now. But had I done that, I would have risked breaking the needle there. It does add a nice touch to the side, or to the little, isn't it cute? And it's all super soft, you guys. Okay. So that was stitch 6 or step 6, and it is considered optional, but I say it's got a really nice professional kind of look to it. See that? Oh, I should have kept it on the other camera. All right, so step 7 is sew the legs together along the front rise. And this would be both. If you guys make these pants, I want you to share them in the school so other people can see. And you don't have to done an applique on the tush like I did. It's 83, but it feels like 89. Yeah, I understand and relate. We have the monsoon flow going through, and we're in Arizona where they say it's a dry heat, but not during the summer. Not when it's monsoon season. We have moist heat, and I'm not complaining. We have so much to be grateful for in our lives, don't we? So this time, I do not have any hold light. What could go wrong? Several things could go wrong. The same conditions apply. We have stretch fabric to stretch fabric. We have the feed dogs pulling the fabric through and pressure from the foot above. There is a elastic called transparent elastic that you can actually use, especially in a seam that goes like that. So I would generally use the Sequins and ribbon foot to sew elastic, and I'm thinking it through because I may do that still. So you've probably bought blouses and stuff where they stitch it from one shoulder to the other to keep it on a hanger. And I don't currently sell this. You can buy this from my friend Kathy Reddy at Creative, what's her name? She should have her product line in here. There it is. KathyRuddy.com. And that's Kathy with a K. There we go. Can you see that? You never want to pull all this elastic out, and never let the end go in the bag. But there's lots of uses for this. I'll put it in the description below the video, but it's Kathy, KATHYRUDDY.com. And she is an educator, friend of mine. When I first started my company, she invited me to come to her house. This is when Clotilda was still alive. If you ever got the Clotilda catalog, a lot of people just pronounced it Clotide, but it's Clotilda. The end got back in the bag, you guys. I've got to find the end. So we created or produced the first videos for the sewing industry. Kathy Ruddy and I. She lives in Washington in the Seattle area. So if you do call her and talk to her, tell her I say hey. So basically, I slept on her couch with her cat and produced my very first video, which was a demonstrational video with Clotilda. And if you're a member of my Creative Feet, Clare Rowley Creative Feet Facebook, it's the video's in there. Oh, I think it's up on my YouTube channel as well, in a playlist that references a long time ago. I don't remember what it's called. All right, so she's an expert at the serger, and this is used to prevent what she calls droopy drawer syndrome. So if you have leggings and your inner seam tends to hang, well, you can stitch this along the seam and it will give body to the seam and prevent those inside seams from getting saggy. And so I'm trying to think, should I use it with the Satinedge Foot? Well, I have not done that. I'm going to use the Overlock Stitch, and I'm going to use this to stop it from stretching as I sew. Even though it's stretchy, doesn't make any sense. I might even test it first. I think I will. So I have some of this already. Let's see what will happen if I sew this together. This is in my head. It will work, but it doesn't mean it will. It's not as stretchy as it used to be. So this used to be made a lot stretchier. If you have some of this and it feels sticky when you rub your finger on it, it's the old kind. They've come a long way on this type of product. So it doesn't really feel sticky at all. And I want to sew it on the curve, so that's and the needle's not going to want to. I might have to use the sequin and ribbon foot. The idea is to not stretch it. Okay, overlock stitch that I used before, same width. I double check to make sure that the guide pin hasn't been moved, because I certainly moved it. Do an entire pattern, double check, make sure that the needle is going to clear that outside swing. And now we're just sewing without stretching this, just kind of keeping it up against the guide. So everything is always touching the white guide. That's where your focus is. And not stretching this, remember, do not stretch the elastic in this case. And what it's going to do is it's going to make this seam stretchy, but not allow it to stretch while you're sewing it. Another trick of the trade. And I'm going slow, just in case, which I don't need to be. See how perfect that sewed? Not a stretch, not a pucker to be found. Smooth curve with no puckers at all, and it has the ability to fully stretch to its full stretch. We're about to create a commercial for the Sequins and Ribbon foot. That foot is capable of so much. And so what did you guys think of that? Isn't that a beautiful stitch? Even if you have a serger, that is a beautiful seam, and it adds strength to the actual seam, but it doesn't allow the fabric to start to lose its body, and it doesn't itch because it is, I believe, made from a nylon as well. So great for brassieres, anytime you're trying to keep something up without gathering it. So now I know that's going to work beautifully for the front seam on this, and that's what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to use the liquid base glue without it for the other seams, and we'll see how it all comes together. You guys starting to feel a little bit better about using stretch fabric with your regular sewing machine? If you are, do a thumbs up or something. Let me know. I can't read your mind. And since I can't hear you talking out loud, even though I know a lot of you are talking out loud back to me. Hi, Pearl. Usually I find out Pearl's here and then she's already gone and I say goodbye. And just so you know, Pearl, every time I've said goodbye when you've left early. But I think I noticed you've left long before or long after you've already left. Do any of you have any questions? Yes, the yoke on a dress, absolutely. It's also great for the back on a zipper. So before you apply a zipper, when you have the bias of the of a non-stretch fabric, when they have you cut it along the bias for the back zipper when it's a long zipper, and if you sew that without stretching it first, it will keep that garment from sagging along the zipper as well. If you put a zipper along a V-neck as well, it'll stop that weird pucker that occurs where the zipper V comes together. Hi, Chase. Is it thunder and lightning? Is it thunder and lightning? I'm sorry. I know. Did you want to come up and say hi? He's a Chase boy. Oh, I know. You're so scared. He's so scary. It's okay. You'd think the boy dogs wouldn't be as scared as the girl dogs, but he definitely is my scaredy pup. I took a drink of my vitamin C water. Okay, so I'm going to use that same stitch for this. I shouldn't have to make any changes. I did just take it down into the zigzag opening though, because I didn't have my hand on it. Where are my glasses? I feel like something just moved. Always better to double check. Because we can, how many times have you done something and gone, wow, I don't even remember doing that. So frequently I've turned the nut and don't even remember doing it. And then, boy, you'll remember that you did it when your needle hits it and you break your needle. Okay, so now it's look 4 inches ahead, put my finger down. I was feeling like I was using the sequins and ribbon foot. Now, if I were using the sequin ribbon foot, I don't have to hold the elastic, but I would have to steer on the fabric. So you kind of figure out which is worse, steering and keeping the seam allowance the same, or having to kind of keep this elastic over to the side. Well, it's turning out to be more fun than I thought it was to make these. Life before the overlock machine. And this is a forward and reverse overlock stitch. I feel like the wire's not in the right spot. It's not. I did move it. Okay, so part of this will be right and part of it won't be. Because that far stitch needs to go over the wire and it wasn't. Now you're going to see the difference between doing it right and doing it wrong. That's always nice too. Night and day. So much easier when the guide is where it's supposed to be. Chase is a 40-pound dog. Or he's supposed to be a 40-pound dog. He's a 45-pound dog because he's got a mommy that's staying home lately and giving him too many treats. And we have not been walking as much as we could be because of the monsoon every day. Such a beautiful seam with this. See how nice. Now this is where I did it wrong and it's still not terrible, but this is where it's done correctly and it's got the right seam allowance. It's one of those times I always feel like I hear applause. Yay, look at that. In my head I hear applause. So, time to refer to the directions. Okay, so we did this seam and we have absolutely no puckers on that seam. See how beautiful that lays. And now we're going to do the inside seam, the inseam. Match up our center seam. Definitely time for liquid based. So I use the Clip It clips. My favorite clips. Easier on your hand than the magic clips. Bigger, so they can accommodate more thickness. Just to keep and maintain that where those seams come together. And now I can lay this out. And apply the liquid base along that seam. Water soluble stabilizer in a bottle. What does water soluble stabilizer do for you? So I'm doing dots. And I'm using sizable dots on this. I don't know if you can see. About a 1/2 inch apart. And the idea is, in this case, we're replacing pins for one, but we're also going to lock the bias or lock the stretch nature of the stabilizer. See how big the dots are? And then slide your finger without pushing the glue into the fiber. So we're kind of coating the surface. Then you take the other and line them up without pushing. Just a very gently touching the fabric so that you don't push the glue into the fibers. I would normally not lift it up and do this on my machine. And this is a time when you want to wait for it to dry, because it's in essence then a non-stretch solid fiber or stabilizer going in that seam. And you have time to move it around, but if you do that too much, well, then there won't be enough glue in there to keep the fabrics from slipping. So when I'm moving this, I'm not grabbing where the glue is, I'm grabbing beside it, kind of nudging it over. And I'm going to do it on the other leg, and I'm going to do the other leg over here where my mess is, so it doesn't move on me as much. So you guys like the colors? I'm really, gosh, now I have that song in my head that I really want. I'm really enjoying yellow lately. Yellow and orange. So larger than normal dots of glue, so that we have enough to, and you can just make it a lot easier on yourself and only do a few inches at a time. Slide across. Doing things so you guys can see is not always easier for me. Especially because God gave me really short arms. Here we go. So you can see about 5 inches at a time. It's much easier to handle than trying to do the whole leg at once. Ha! I got my glasses, Jean. I should make a t-shirt. Where are my glasses? Have you seen my glasses? Here we go. I wonder if this pattern could be used for us, for our size. I'm so short. I definitely am feeling the urge now to make my own leggings. Are you guys ready to make your own leggings now? Remember, if you get this elastic, keep the end out. You can put everything in there and then close that Ziploc bag and keep that end out. Liquid-based glue is non-toxic. I've had customers at shows go, and eat it, and I don't recommend you do that, but there's always a smart aleck in the group. And it's polyvinyl alcohol, the same thing as your water-soluble stabilizer. It's just wet. It has water in it, and the water is a purified water. So now we just need to go from one end to the other. And I don't know if it's been long enough to dry. It's such a moist day, and I turned the air conditioner off, and it's really starting to get hot in here. So apparently they're not getting that air conditioner in today. Another night without the air conditioner. But I have a bed to sleep on, so gotta always be grateful for what we've got, right? Okay. Go up the inside seam. And I did just use this stitch. I'm a little nervous not to put the elastic in there. But we're trying all the different ways. I'm going to take a sip, so I'm muting my mic for a second. So I was showing you my Starbucks cup on accident. I was going to switch cameras and forgot. I save all my Starbucks cups and all my straws, and I wash my straws and my cups. My daughter feels like it's so silly. But they're just the right size in my hand. And I'm really not thinking this is dry yet. It's almost dry. But I've had people say absolutely awesome to use this for sewing sweater fabric together as well. And you can see beautiful. It's beautiful. No puckering at all. See? Time to buy some stretch fabric and have some fun, you guys. So I have some bras that need new underwires, and I bought new underwires. Would you guys like me to show you how to replace an underwire in a bra? Not today, but I have a box of straws in my kitchen. Instead of a junk drawer, I have a straw drawer. No, I'm just kidding. Not that many straws, but all the traveling that I did and years of Starbucks and stuff. So I had a family gathering and I gave everyone a Starbucks cup and they were like, what? I said, isn't it nice to know you have, you don't have to worry about breaking your glass when you're in the yard? And I think they all thought, maybe it's not such a bad idea. Okay, now I'm coming to the center, lift and spin it around. Always the wire off the edge. Make sure that you never turn the fabric without stopping. And you lift and pull the threads off the wire and then we begin. If you don't pull the threads off the wire, you can bend the wire and then when your needle comes down, it can hit the pin. So if you ever broke a needle after doing really well for a long time, then that may have been what happened. You might have turned a 90-degree corner without releasing the threads from the guide wire, guide pin. I got long piece of thread because I have a bad habit of not cutting my tails. And like I couldn't find my glasses for a second, I can't find my little scissors. They're probably with it. Here it is. Okay, cut those tails. Zoom, zoom. Watching right here, not the needle. So which method do you think would be best for putting on the little cuffs? Which one do you think would be the easiest and best method? Come on, you guys, participate. Give me an answer. See, no puckers. How are we on time? 2.5 hours. Oh, we gotta quit. I'm not supposed to go over 2 hours. Yeah, I bought a bunch of underwires. Aren't they cute? Except for it looks to me like this is the front. That's just because there's no diaper in them. And you can stretch. For those of you who are wondering about the fusing of the applique to the stretch fabric, if it would still have stretch, it does. Are they cute? Oh, I just need a little grandchild. Can you do negotiations with my children? That's one way of doing it. Except for then you have the seam allowance. So the only way to have the cuffs not have a seam or a thread hanging down the inside seam is to put them on after you've sewn the leg up. Where are they? Where's my cuffs? We're almost done. So we have to sew the cuffs side seams together. And I did this with my Minky dog sweatshirt lesson, which is one of the Fabrically Speaking Live episodes. I think it was last year's season 1. So you put right sides together and we're going to sew up the side seam. But still, what method to sew this to this? Which one do you think we should do? The glue or the elastic application, or what was the other one that I did? I can't remember. So right now I have nothing to see what happens. Just the Satinedge foot, which is really helping to keep the fabric from shrinking in. That wire and having the stitch go over the wire does a tremendous help for you to not have your fabric seam allowance change simply because the fabric can't bear the thread. So this is with nothing to prevent the fabrics from stretching, and this fabric does stretch in all directions. So because the foot is made out of the material that it's made out of, which is in part polycarbonate, it doesn't spread the fabric out like a metal foot would, especially on a moist day, just like a soda can. Sweats. There we go. Very, very light touch, not holding, not pushing down, just making sure the fabrics don't shift so much. So this is with nothing at all to prevent the stretch fabric from stretching. And this is an overlock stitch that is built into my machine. And see, it does have some expansion, but not very much, and not a tremendous amount of puckering. It did expand. It is a little bit wider, but this is the cuff. Wonder how she's going to have us do this, because there's several ways we could do this. So she does have us do this. So now we have the right side facing out. Satinedge is your best friend, I'll tell you what, almost 90% of the time. So because she has an overlock machine, she just overlocks it across. There's other ways we could go about this, but I'm going to go ahead and follow the pattern. So you line up your inside seam. But what's going to stop these fabrics from shifting? So I'm going to glue these together to keep them, to make these two layers behave as one layer. I know I should have done them both at the same time. But if I do this, then this one will dry before I'm ready. And anytime I do binding of any kind, I always do this. I always glue the two pieces to keep them from shifting. It's much more relaxing than having to pay attention as you're sewing to these two layers. So if you don't have our glue yet, this is your best friend for stuff like this. All right. What should I do next week, you guys? Help me figure it out now. So I don't go all week going, what should I teach them next week? Yeah, I don't get along with pins. I usually end up bleeding if I use pins on anything. Probably because I don't use them very much. It's so rare. When I do some garment construction and I do, like, I made my daughter some clothes. Sometimes you have to use pins. And I use a pin on a pillow on the corner. Trying to think. There aren't very many times I use pins. P-I-N-S. Because I don't enunciate that as well as some people. Kind of runs in our family. The word pen for writing and the word pen for penning are almost the same when we talk. You can't find your liquid-based glue? Amy. Oh, I don't even. It's just awful. Just the thought of not having it when you need it. There we go. So now that one's ready and I do the same thing again. What are you going to do if you can't find your... I'm going to glue this to this too. So it's all ready. People buy lots of bottles at a time. Maybe they have that premonition that they're going to lose their bottle. And people buy a lot of handles, the Octi-Hoop handles. Like, I think the thought process is, that's little, I'm going to lose it, I'm going to buy more. Yeah, sometimes you got to pin, but... See, this is not the right size. This definitely is too big. So that's not fun. Because we need this to be smaller. So now I gotta unglue and chop some of that off. And it's nice that you can do that. Even though I had it all glued, I was able to pull it all apart. Tinkerbell's sneezing. I'm pretty sure that she intended for them to be tied around the ankle. Looks like it. doesn't it? Certainly not cuffs like folded up over the leg, so I'm going to make it smaller. She probably says something, but I'm not reading everything. So what does she say? Match up the seam. Stretch the cuff to fit. Oh, the cuff's too big, so I probably looked at the wrong measurement because I doubt it's her fault. How many rulers do you guys have? Share. So if you're making the toddler, the 2T, the leg when it's sewn together is 3 3/4 inches. So that means the cuff, once it's got the side seam sewn up, needs to be less than 3 3/4. And I'm going to go ahead and do 3 inches because that's only a quarter, or that's 3/4 of an inch that it needs to stretch in. You know what? I'm just going to have it be a 1/2 inch. It's not like, oh, I had the it off the edge of the smaller mat. So now it's kind of good that I did them one at a time because now I know I have to cut the other one smaller. Make sure I don't mess up the waist. This is way too big. That can't be it. It's probably what it is I grabbed. I didn't have the run. Too many pieces. That's way too big. Nope, that's right. Hi, Tinkerbell. You guys need to go out for potty? Because I have them locked in because of the air conditioning people. But if they're not going to do the air conditioning, they need to go out for potty. So I'm going to leave you guys for a minute. I'll give you this to look at while I'll let them out so that I don't have something to clean up in a minute. You gotta go potty? Yeah, you have that kind of look on your face. Okay. You guys gotta go outside, go potty? Well, I'm very excited that there's a gigantic air conditioner there. Except for it's not on and it's not going on. So I don't know if they have the shut off or what. I need to call this guy. I hate to do that with you guys, but if he ends the day and there's something I need him to tell me. Nothing like being live and having to make a phone call. I'm good. How are you? I see. Okay, so yes, sure. How early would you like to come? Earlier the better. Okay. Okay. But I was up in the attic today and it wasn't terribly hot. So, I'm just letting you know it wasn't it's cooler outside right now than it was earlier. But tomorrow morning between 8 and 9. Great. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. Bye. Like we were told not to interrupt you under no circumstances. So, they have to go in the attic and make an adjustment and it was too hot to go into the attic. So now we're scheduled and I should have a nice cool weekend. Okay. What are you guys having for dinner? I'm getting hungry. I need ideas. Okie dokie. One more night of not being cool, but that's okay. Right sides together, sew up the side seam. Making sure I did it right. Am I muted? Nope. My son is like, you need to do things like, eat in front of them. And I'm like, what? I don't have to eat in front of them. Because that's what gamers do. They eat and they're like, see what I'm eating? And I cross the line at chewing in front of you. I think I'm doing this right. It looks so little because it is little. It's a itty bitty little, tiny little toddler 2T outfit. If you had this pattern laid out and you cut a whole bunch, it wouldn't take very long to sew them all together. You just made pizza crust? Pizza. I don't do well with pizza. You have that for me. Here we go. Besides, did you make your own pizza crust? That's something So I am just making sure my fabric is touching the guide. And this is with nothing, no glue again. Just to kind of show you what to expect. And did you know a stitch like this from your sewing machine is stronger than a stitch from a serger? He's so little. But honestly, I think I'm gonna... I feel like I did it wrong. I probably did it wrong. If I did it wrong, it's because I'm too hungry, and I'm going to sew this one on, and then I'll do the waist, because you don't need to see me do the same thing twice. So this is kind of like how small my dog sleeve was for Tinkerbell's sweatshirt. And obviously it's too small for the free arm. So you would just go like this. I know a lot of people are just like, oh my God, I want pizza. And I'm like, ugh. It's like maybe like 3 times a year I go, oh, I want some pizza. Unless I'm in New York. Now, if you're in New York, you got to have a slice. There's something about New York pizza. Dum, dum, dum. Almost done. That's my almost done little song, apparently. Definitely less stressful if it's all glued first. So this would be the same way that you sewed the legs together. If you have a regular sewing machine, you know, that little zigzag stitch followed up with the 3-step zigzag or a zigzag stitch afterward. That's wider. It's gonna be so cute when it's all done. Yeah, starting to feel the burn in my belly. Also, dividing your fabric in fourths when you have to stretch something is ideal, which I did not do. And I definitely did not do this right. Like I ended up cutting this the wrong way. So just kind of showing you how to sew it, and no, I'm not going to try to pretend I did it right, because it's not going to be right. But I can fix it. That would be how you would apply that. And that's how you end up with the nice looking cuff. So now I'm going to do the waist, and we'll be doing the elastic with this. Have any of you ever had New York pizza? Oh yeah, Pat has. It is something else. And my brother-in-law, he's like, you're not allowed to just like eat it like that. You have to fold it in half, and I still prefer it flat. Yeah, I have a Tinkerbell sweatshirt, which is, well, I used it, so it's not on the set anywhere for me to grab. But it's her her sweatshirt for the winter. And I made it out of minky. So that's a lesson if you want to make a dog sweatshirt and learn how to handle minky fabric at the same time. Okay, so she has us sew the elastic to size and make a loop. And that's challenging to do that. But it's also because she has you make a tube out of this and then insert it in and sew a seam on the outside. Sewing the two ends of elastic together is not easy. Have any of you had difficulty doing that before? But she's saying to do it, so I'm trying to do what she says because it's her pattern. Gotta fold it. Fold it in half and then sew across. Is that what you're saying, Pat? And how big did she say the waist should be for the elastic? And she does have this nice chart. Cut elastic 18 inches for the 2T. I don't know, man. I am so hungry. No whining. It looks big. I'm starting to think I may have cut the smaller one. Huh? An 18-month? I don't know. I'm going to first fold this in half and kind of see. And it needs to be smaller, and it is just a little bit smaller. So I guess that's right. So whenever I've got elastic in my hand, generally I go, it's a job for the sequins and ribbon foot. And that is not because of the tube that holds elastic, but the bottom of the foot. When I made this foot, I made it so that you could sew sequins and not flip them over when you spun around and crossed over them. And it just so happened the same design that lets you spin around real easy also locks into the feed dogs. And so this foot is just insanely easier for sewing elastic. I'm going to give you a little bit of an example. So if we have the Satinedge foot on and we put a piece of elastic beneath the foot, we can pull on it and generally it will just slide out. And a lot of metal feet would do the same thing. But with the sequins and ribbon foot and its bottom, you can pull and pull and pull. And actually this machine does not have normal pressure, so I'll put the normal pressure, and I can pull the sewing machine around with it. It's just so you can see that I'm not cheating. So the needle is not into the elastic, and I'm pulling the sewing machine. That is how strong this foot holds elastic. So you are no longer required as a participant to pull from behind the foot. This would be the normal position for people sewing elastic. So, how can I sew this elastic together easier? And what I generally do is use that 3-step zigzag stitch again. And I don't try to actually move forward or go across the elastic. Instead, And this foot you can use a 20 millimeter wide zigzag. There's no way you can hit the foot. So if you have an industrial sewing machine and you have a 20 millimeter wide width, you can use it with this foot. The opening is very wide. So I'm going to go all the way to 7 on the width. This is as wide as this machine will sew. And I don't really want it to move forward. Is this the right stitch? No, I'm on the wrong stitch. You can drop your feed dogs, which would be better. So I'm dropping my feed dogs. That means the fabric or the elastic should not move. See, I can't stand that about this machine. The feed dogs, when they're down, it kind of lifts the foot. It makes the foot sloppy. So I'm putting the feed dogs back up. And instead, I'm going to shorten my stitch length. So if you have the Baby Lock Crescendo and you know how to make it not become a sloppy foot when the feed dog's down, I would really like to know. I could just call my friend at Baby Lock. And they do that to make free motion easier, but I don't like it on free motion either. It's partly why I almost never lower my feed dogs on free motion. So it's kind of sewing sideways, but you're not having to advance the elastic. Now to make it flat, just kind of lay it down and we'll do it again. And 9014 stretch needle is what I have on here. I would not take a chance. So what we're trying to do is flatten it out. Ah! And I broke the needle. So that's how many needles, Amy, for the year? I got to turn the air conditioner back on, you guys. Shoo-wee. I think it's about 80 degrees in here right now. That's too hot to sew. So I broke the needle, but I really didn't even need to do that. It's strong. It's definitely going to hold. So now I'm going to follow her instructions. And I got to put a new needle on. The stretch needle is a more fragile needle than a regular universal needle. But you're also more likely to skip a stitch on a universal. I am going to go ahead and continue to use the stretch needle and try not to push too far on its abilities. The wind is back. The air conditioner is like twice the size of the other one, so it'll be interesting to see how fast the house gets cool. Come on. Please work. Yay. Slide the elastic loop in between the layers and baste the waistband shut. You may need to stretch your elastic. We have to sew the elastic or the waistband right sides together first, like we did on the cuff. Definitely have the stretchy way. 5 or 6. I don't know what I asked that made you say that. Oh, I think it's my 6th. I have officially broken 6 needles in 2021. Back to the Satinedge Foot for the Overlock Stitch. Wrong stitch. There we go. Making sure that the needle swings over the wire in the swing that goes off the edge. And this is once again the overlock stitch because it sews a seam and it goes over the edge. I just need a grandchild, and then I'll start making all kinds of baby stuff for you guys. So this would probably be a time to use the free arm. But my machine is kind of glued together, and I haven't cleaned it up after the painting that I did on it. And not everyone has a free arm. Okay, so we're supposed to insert the loop of elastic into the waistband. And this is when we're going to use the sequins and ribbon foot, because it's going to allow me to stretch the fabric straight. And we're not going to use the actual guide. We're not going to insert, obviously we can't insert that elastic into the tube. And so it's the bottom of the foot that's going to aid us in sewing this elastic. And not that I need to, but I'm going to line up my seam of the elastic with the inside seam. Now my hair is blowing all over my face and tickling me. No whining, no whining, no whining. Day 3 with no air conditioner in the main part of the house. So the idea, or what she's telling you to do, is to not stitch through the elastic. It's kind of like encasing ahead of time. So right needle position, and if I can't get my needle to go all the way over to the right, straight stitch, there we go. Yeah, so I'm over. So the tricky part is to not hit the elastic. So in this case, I'm thinking there's no better foot for this than the Satinedge foot. Because what does Satinedge do? It guides you along the edge. We can't see the edge, so we need the help of a foot that literally sees for you. And in this case, we want our needle to be to the right of the pen or the guide. Sorry, my arm is sore. It's too far to the right. So the wire is off the edge and the guide or the needle is to the right of the wire. And now all I have to focus on is keeping these raw edges together. Because the foot will feel the edge of the elastic through the foot. I have my pressure set on the heaviest setting and so I'm getting some bunching, so I'm going to reduce the foot pressure. Take it all the way down to the 1. And that's how hard the foot pushes down on the fabric. So we want a light pressure for this so that we don't distort the fabric, because we're not stretching anything. We're allowing everything to lay flat. It's an interesting way of doing a waistband. I've never done one this way. It's kind of clever. So now I'm coming up on a thick area, and I increase stitch length whenever I feel like I need to push the fabric through. And that way the sewing machine does that pulling through for me. And then once I get up onto the ridge and I start coming down, I shorten it back down again. That way your stitch length doesn't have big long stitches in one part. You've never made pants? Now you know you can. This is just a small version of a pair of pants. It's not that intimidating anymore, right? Following the person's pattern is the most challenging part. But the principles that you're seeing me use here are the same on adult and child. It's stretch fabric on a regular sewing machine, no matter what it is that you want to make, whether it be a bathing suit, your own lingerie. So this is one time you're going to see me do elastic with the Satinedge foot. And then I'm going to finish it up with the sequins and ribbon foot, and it will be a no roll elastic waistband. So you notice I'm lowering the needle periodically, and that's because the elastic is smaller than the fabric. Still, the goal is to keep raw edges together and have it be smooth without doing any stretching at this point. This is at the stretchiest part of this fabric. Try to keep it nice and smooth. Tick tock, I'm getting hungry. We're almost done here. How many of you have a grandchild you could make these for? The pattern was $7 and something cents. And it covers all sizes from like a 12-year-old down to a infant. It's a pretty good price. The pattern, the link to the pattern is in the description below the video. When this ends, you'll see it in the more information area beneath the video. It's the Peekaboo pattern, and if you click on that link, instead of just going to their website, then I get a tiny bit of compensation for inspiring you to buy the pattern. So really my main focus is just not letting the fabric bunch up and keeping the raw edges together. The foot is the one keeping me off the edge of that elastic, not letting me strike it. This will not prevent that elastic from flipping around inside the waistband though, will it? So I'm going to do one extra step than she has listed. The end where I had it here is slipped down to there. Okay, here we go. So now that it's in there, we know that if we just make no puckers, that is the size that it needs to be for the waistband. Does that make sense to you? So if I start seeing it get puckered, then I'm not stretching enough, and I'm going to switch to the Sequins and Ribbon Foot, the one that has the power. And I want to sew with the right side out. In this case, I'm going to use the side of the foot and line it up with the seam allowance. And I am going to sew, start from the seam. This time I want to take my pressure for the foot all the way to normal. So the goal is to even it out. So I'm just putting my finger like that so I don't stretch more here than I do there. And now I know that that amount of tension on there is going to keep it nice and flat. I think I'm going to use the side of the foot right here instead to guide straight. Straight stitch. And I'm lengthening the stitch length to the longest setting on the machine, which is a 5 on this machine. I'm going to sew a couple stitches forward, couple stitches back. Okay. And now it's just to keep the fabric flat, no puckers. And the foot will take it through for us. Keep my eye focused here, not at the needle. Be tempting to look at the needle. I got the microphone right in my eyesight. That's the hump on the elastic again. And my length's already the longest it will go, so. Get back up there, there we go. So see how it's just smooth? There's no pucker right here. That's the game, or the goal. The game. The goal of the game. And then when we're done, it will be gathered a little bit. Not a lot, but a little. And again, reverse. Now that's enough to keep it from rolling inside of the waistband. So you won't have the child going, feeling that pinch that we're familiar with. Now we have to probably do the same thing we did before, considering this has been taught for an overlock, so we'll be overcasting along that edge there, which I've already shown you, but I will go around and do it one more time because they're not done until the waistband is on. Unless you guys think you've got it, because it's the same as the cuff. Aren't they going to be cute? 3 great grandchildren. 26. I can't say it too much because I want my daughter to be ready. They're building a house though. She said, I'm not going to even think about having kids till I have my house built. So the house is being built. One step forward. I guess that's it. There are other ways of doing waistbands. We'll save that for another day. Doing the overlock stitch again. Okay, that won't let me change the width. I'm so hungry. I really feel like it could have been a little bit smaller waistband. And it helps to have the kid, you know, the child that's going to be wearing these, to measure what the elastic size really should be. It should be a matter of comfort and fitting that person. So if you're going to make some leggings for yourself, you want to think about that. The elastic should fit you. I'm a little bit irritable. There's nothing like having a gigantic air conditioner out there and going, oh, it can't run just because there's something in the attic that they need to do. It's all right. Okay, I gotta double check these. Make sure that my needle is not gonna hit the foot. I swore I'd never be that mother that begged their child to have a child. I was wrong. I'm not as bad as her mother-in-law though. I don't want to get in trouble with the daughter. Okay, it's definitely clearing the foot. Okay, you guys, I'm almost done. So if you have questions, now is the time to write them down, because I'm not going to dilly around when I'm done. I'm going to go make some dinner. And maybe a cocktail with ice in it. Now you fold your fabric in 4 points and do the same thing with the waistband and mark them in 4 points. And it helps to ensure that it's gathered equally all the way around. This is such a slight amount of gather, and it's kind of a different waistband because I don't know. Still feel like I messed up on the sizing. That I must be using a smaller pants than I thought. Butterfly's too high. Okay, gotta make sure you're stretching. I feel like this, you know what? I bet they had it this size so you could cut off some of it with the serger. Because the waistband is acting like it's bigger. And it should be smaller. Definitely another time to glue. Of course, you could also use the clips. A clip in 4 points. They'd be cuter with a little body inside of them. The butterfly flew too high. It'd be different if I planned the applique for the pattern, but buying a blanket and depending on the pattern on the fabric is why it's a little bigger than I probably would have made it had I designed the applique for it. But I try to show you guys cheats because I get accused of doing things that are too hard for a lot of people sometimes. You guys don't think that, do you? Are my projects too difficult? Tinkerbell just came in and looked around the corner at me like, you know that there's a rule in this house now, Mom, that you're not allowed to go 4 or 5 hours anymore on these Thursdays. Almost to the reveal, except for one cuff. And I am going to remove the cuff and cut it right off screen. It just needs a little diaper to fill in that little tush. What do you think? Needs a little body in there? Okay, everybody. What do you think? They're cute. So this is the Peekaboo Little Britches pattern from Peekaboo Pattern Company with a applique on the gusset that you can leave blank if you want, or you could embroider on it. And if you watched last week's episode, part 1 of this 2-part video, you'll learn the science about what you could and should put on the tush of this adorable pattern. Well, everything is made easier with the creative feet. I struggled before I invented the feet. When I did appliques, I never wanted anyone to look up close at them. Now I have a high-def camera focused right in on it. But trust me, without the feet, I struggle tremendously, just like you. Which is why I don't even know where most of the feet are that come with these machines, because the Satinedge Foot replaces almost all the feet that are in your kit. Oh, I need to make a top. Oh yeah, I do need a little top to go with it. No clothes next week. What else can I do? What should I teach you next week, you guys? Did you guys put any ideas in there? I always seem to have something happen that makes me come up with the idea. And you can thank Pat Wells for this project. So if you have a pattern that you bought and you want to try it, I was actually thinking of this. I can't do the whole thing on a live because I don't know how long it would take, but I don't know if you were paying attention to last week, and I said I couldn't open the drawers here. Well, I found what was locking the drawers shut. And I was thinking it might be fun to teach you this, and it is clothes. And it is what they call a broomstick skirt and show you how you can gather this up and apply ribbons and use the sequins and ribbon foot to make this entire skirt. Would you guys like that? What do you think? This is a McCall's pattern, 6840. I have no idea what year I bought this and if it's still available. And if it's not, I'll try to find a substitute for you. But we could do a small one. I could actually teach you a little doll version, and that way it won't go 6 hours. I actually have one of the American Dream doll girls. I think that's what it's called. Should I do that? Should I make a doll skirt next week? You guys are just talking to each other. I need answers. Give me answers, you guys. A circle skirt's different than this. Although this kind of does end up looking like a circle skirt. But there are things that are challenging about making this, and with the sequins and ribbon foot is so easy. The sequins and ribbon foot, the liquid-based glue, and you. So we will see what I decide next week, because I'm not going to commit this week, but odds are I'll do that, because that was making it so I couldn't open my drawers. I think it wants to be made. And whether I make it full size or doll size is the same principles that you would follow for a full size skirt. And now you have a pattern if you want to make one for yourself. And it's up to the length of the skirt is determined by how many tiers you sew. And you can make it out of any fabric. So if you have like a rayon fabric that will drape nicely and be more flattering on your figure. If you're thin already, well, it doesn't matter what you make it out of. A circle skirt can be challenging to him. Yes, I have tricks for that. Did some of the techniques in a video a few weeks back in the Fabrically Speaking Live. I think I mentioned hemming in the description, so. All right, so we will have some doll fun next week. All right, I'm excited. Actually, I might show you, because I don't know if you know this, but Mattel Toys uses creative feet. And they used them on the big designer dresses. They were charging like $400 for these dresses. It was when I was on the Home Shopping Network back in the 90s. In case you didn't know, we were on the Home Shopping Network. In fact, all the porcelain doll manufacturers that were selling back then on the show were also using the creative feet. We would hang out in the green room before we went live on HSN. Long time ago. Feels like another life. And I'm still sitting at a sewing machine with a camera and you. And I'm pretty sure it is time for me to go. So thank you guys so much for spending another Thursday afternoon with me. And if you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I sure hope you'll do so today. You hit the subscribe button and hit the bell. And if you do, then you'll always be notified when I upload any videos, live or recorded videos. I always have to look at this one button. I think I need to move it. If you like this video, when it ends, go ahead and hit that thumbs up, because when it ends is when you can hit that thumbs up. Easier than right now. And my school is create.clarerowley.com. Be sure to join that. It's free to join, and everybody here hangs out there as well, so you can get to know one another and sew together. And when I do start doing live events again, I'll be notifying you in the school. What was I going to say? What did you write, Christine? HSN is where your mom bought them? Aw. It always makes me get a little choked up when I hear about people inheriting my products. They've been around 32 years, so a lot of people have passed them on to other people. And I'm so glad that you have them and that you get to use them. Let's see. I was saying something, but I totally forgot what I was saying. So that's another indicator that is time for me to bid you adieu. I love you all. Mwah. Bye.